coming this afternoon. We're going to dive into how we respond. This morning's session was kind of the state of millennial culture, looking into teenage, adolescent life, their perception of their world, and we looked at some specific areas: school, busyness, family, relationships, and then religion and spirituality. And after what probably felt a little bleak if you were here, we ended with, well, what do we do? So what? What is our role? How can we respond with youth, student choir, whatever word you want to use, okay? How can our student choir ministry respond and help engage students, whether they be kind of on the cusp of this millennial range? These would be technically those students that are maybe juniors and seniors, and then this new younger generation that's coming up, 7th through 10th graders. They still, even though they would be classified in different generations, there's a lot of similarities they're experiencing in culture as they go through this time in their life together as teenagers. So how can student choir respond? And that's what we're going to look at, trying to unpack here's some ways of mindset that we can have about what we do. I want to ask, how many of you, I didn't ask this, I don't think, in the first session, how many of you have a student choir right now? Wonderful. Say that again?
I have a community choir that's a student thing.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Good. There's a good number of you. So, to get the ball rolling a little bit, if I ask this question, what is the lifeblood of your student choir? What would you say? Or, what would your students say?
Relationships.
Yes.
Okay. Relationships.
Well, not just relationships amongst themselves, but your relationship with them as well.
Good. Someone else. What might your students say?
It's fun.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Safe place to be.
Safe place. Okay.
Our mission trips and do not miss.
Yeah. The choir mission trips. Do not miss events. Yeah. Absolutely. Lifeblood, the session, the heartbeat of student choir. Just think for a minute. Okay, the function of the heart. A muscular organ. Functions as a pump for moving the blood through the body. So we all kind of understand that. Circulates oxygen, sustains life. So we're asking the question as it relates to student choir, what are the aspects of a student choir ministry that give it life, that sustain its existence? And that's what we want to consider. As we think back on the discussion from this morning, and even if you weren't here, you'll find and be able to jump right in with what's going on. Based on that discussion, I love this book. We, as a faculty, read it last year, Visions of Vocation, A Common Grace for the Common Good, by Stephen Garber. And the overarching kind of thesis is the calling in our life, our vocation. He states this question: based on what you have seen, heard, and know, how will you respond? In whatever arena you may find yourself, based on what you see and heard and know, how will you respond? Pretty much he's saying we have a mandate, we have a calling, right, to respond to the situation that we've seen this morning. And I think we would all understand that, but it's just important that we don't skip over that. We don't, as my teacher would say, don't overlook the does. Yes, we have a mandate. We have a calling to respond to this situation. Come on in, folks. I won't, just don't throw anything at me if you're on the front row. No tomatoes, I won't throw anything at you. Come on in. A couple seats over there. And think about your calling. You might not think of being a student choir director as a part of your calling, or that you are called to be a student choir director. But think about your calling in this way. Friedrich Buechner says it this way, and I love it. Maybe you've heard this before. Calling or vocation is where our deep gladness meets the world's greatest need. That's calling. Think about what it is as a leader, a minister, a conductor, whatever. Where is your deep gladness? And then what are the greatest needs that you see immediately in your field of influence? So, our goal here, establish ways that vibrant, purposeful, and missional student choir ministry, that is, a ministry that has a healthy heartbeat, can respond to the current culture, can respond to the needs of the students that we have in the seats in our choirs. And it comes down to me, as I've seen and thought about this, I lump it into 3 terms that you've seen on the handout. 3 signs of a healthy heartbeat. Or you can think of it as the 3 essentials for a vibrant and active student choir ministry. Relevance, retreat, and relationships. And we're going to take the next several minutes and unpack what these things mean. Relevance, retreat, and relationships. You've got a handout. We'll be filling in, find things on the slides. You can fill in the blanks as we go here. Relevance. So here's the big question. Is student choir still relevant today? Yes.
Yeah.
Why? And what makes it so? You say yes immediately with quickness and fervor.
They still need to learn about God and
Okay.
be shepherded in that direction.
They need to sing.
And song is the best way to learn and remember and retain.
Okay. Someone else. Why is it relevant?
It still has the potential to change lives.
Okay.
It's unique and it's usually not offered anywhere else, that type of environment.
Yeah. We'll talk about how unique it is and the leverage we have, that we are different in ways from the public school choir.
Yes.
And we need to leverage those ways, and many of us aren't. So, yeah, it starts here, because there are people that will say it's not. There might be parents you have to convince, or staff members that you have to convince, that it's not relevant. But here's my thing I want you to, well, let me say the definition before I mention something. So, what is it? Just a quick official definition. The quality of being closely connected or appropriate to the matter at hand. Okay? Relevance, the quality of being closely connected or appropriate to the matter at hand. This morning at 8 o'clock, we saw the matter at hand with our students in our first session. The needs of our teenagers, the needs of adolescents. And what I want to caution you here, and I don't think I've put this on a slide, is relevance is often confused with being trendy. There are churches that are pursuing things that they think are relevant when really it's trendy. Make no mistake, folks, the gospel is relevant, but it is not trendy. Okay? And youth choir you have to have that same mindset, okay? The difference between relevance and being trendy. So some guiding thoughts for us. Some quotes here I'm going to intersperse through the presentation. Aristotle, it is clear that children should be instructed in some useful things, but to be always seeking after the useful does not become free and exalted souls. This is part of a quote from Weston Noble. What did I discover I was doing to inhibit the miracle of wholeness? We have a seat here, and we have one here as well. Come on in. What did I do to discover that I was inhibiting the miracle of wholeness in a rehearsal, or even in a performance? The first destructive factor present is negativism. It is possible for a negative element to produce a positive one, and it is impossible, excuse me. And surprisingly, we are all prone to be negative. I remember seeing on the Today Show the results of a study regarding our normal thought patterns. The results were alarming. The average person thinks negatively 95% of the time. He goes on. If this human computer is recording primarily negative thinking brought about by daily circumstances, adolescent culture, but not always beyond our control, and if my unconscious constantly colors the way my conscious mind perceives daily experiences, the results are obvious. What a challenge to attack negative thinking, not only in rehearsals, but during the rest of the day as well. Student choir, you can have a role in this. You can have a role in breathing and speaking in the negativity, the dark place that many students find themselves, but do a really good job masking and hiding. It is absolutely relevant. Youth choir. What is this when we think about relevance? I describe it this way. We have the opportunity to shape identity or character and faith. That is one thing that can make it so very relevant. They need to learn about God, someone said, right? They'll learn about many other things. They'll learn how to sing. That's great. We'll implant great, hopefully strong spiritual truths in them. But that's what makes it relevant. We're shaping their faith. We're helping shape their character. And at a crucial time in their life, we're helping shape their identity. That's what I think of when I think of the relevance of student choir. So what does that look like? Well, youth choir, student choir can help us reach and retain teenagers by a few things. First, I think of as meeting specific identity-forming needs. We all have these needs, but especially teenagers. Emotional, social, spiritual, even physical growing needs, but musical, artistic needs as well. What are those things? Well, in youth choir and student choir, they can learn how to become a young adult in a safe community. They feel purpose. They find friendship. They find, hopefully, if we're doing things right, we've got adult support, and they're finding meaningful adult relationships. We're taking them out to go serve and interact with the community. They're learning empathy, humility, honesty, trust, respect, all the really important character traits. And I'm struggling to find many schools that are knowing how to teach those things anymore. And we have a role to step in. Learn to look outside of themselves. That's key. You go and take your choir to serve. You go to the senior adult home. You go to the hospital. You go to the community with your choir and do things. And in these ways, they're implementing, they're testing their faith, they're putting it to use. We are being relevant by reaching and retaining teenagers and forming them in character and faith and identity. Huge for us. But also, we're providing an organized structure or a system with adult support for developing faith in a safe, supportive, trusting community. That's a lot to think about and to sink in. A few points here. These both come from a book by Dr. Christian Smith, who's at the University of Notre Dame. I encourage you to get it. Souls in Transition, a study that they did on how to help teenagers transition out of high school into young adulthood. And there's some key points he makes about the importance of adult involvement in teenagers' lives. Adults can help translate faith by handing down, I like this, the catechesis, language and practices of Christianity in tangible and understandable ways. Student choir has an opportunity, a way of building that in to do that. Adults can help teenagers in articulating their faith. The adults that are involved in your student choirs can have conversations in the hallway, on trips, before, after rehearsal, all that, even specific guided conversations. That's huge. Also, students can practice spiritual disciplines. Prayer, Bible study, even testimony or witness. What's God doing in their life? Or what did they experience while they were out serving today, if you're on a mission trip of some sort? They're rehearsing the gospel in song. How powerful and faith-shaping is that? Students can practice articulating their faith through sharing opportunities in and out of rehearsal. They can serve others through sharing music or by hands-on service ministry. Maybe many of your groups are already involved in these kinds of things. And it's important that they stay involved and do these. This is how youth choir is so relevant for today. Also from Souls in Transition. A student choir ministry can do what Dr. Christian Smith talks about in helping students transition into young adulthood, but also transition out of an inactive and passive faith and give them a way to actively put their faith to use, to engage their faith. He suggests 4 ways that we can do this. And think about how this could apply in a student choir setting. Try to make that bridge. He says providing a cultural toolbox to making faith consequential. A creed, a community, a calling, and a hope. This creed, an articulated God story. Think about the words of the songs that you sing. A community. Well, think about the choir, right? A calling. Going out on ministry opportunities and singing. There's a sense of purpose in what they're doing. And we often have to remind them of that week in and week out at rehearsals. and then a hope. And when they see that, when they encounter other people that they see that have needs, there's a sense that they're part of something bigger than themselves. That God is moving and they are part of that in some way. And that is so key. So I think you've grabbed, hopefully gotten the application. A mission-minded, purposeful, service-based youth choir can actively help provide a systematic way for adults and students to interact, huge, a place for developing these tools listed above, and a method to respond to the current challenges of today's teenagers. It's huge for us. This is the application of the importance of relevance. That's really wordy. I tried to think of ways to pare it down, but I like that. So that's the way it's going to be. So think about it. Now, why is identity, why is this so important? Faith development, character development. Aren't we just a choir? I'm supposed to be singing. There's some that think that, but they won't buy into this. There's some directors that will not buy into this. But the reality is we're working with students. They're in a very volatile, they're very impressionable state, right? A very influential time, and we're trying to generate, here's the key, patterns of behavior, right? We're trying to generate patterns of thought, awareness. I mentioned a book in the lunch forum on student choir. This book, Sticky Faith. I highly encourage you, I mentioned it this morning as well, to get this. Parents of teenagers, leaders, ministers, whoever. By Kara Powell and Chap Clark, both at Fuller Theological Seminary. They did a study on why is it that students are abandoning the faith when they leave high school and going into college. And there's some really great practical ways of combating that trend that we're seeing. But here's some points they make, some of the things they found in their research. Kids who left their faith report having questions about faith in early adolescence that were ignored by significant adults, whether that be their parents, pastors, teachers, whoever. Okay, that's important for us. A factor causing kids to shelve their faith is the segregation of kids and adults in church. Kids who attended church-wide services are more likely to keep their faith. Think about this now in terms of the role of the student choir and the overall picture of what's happening in the music ministry, but also how they involve themselves with younger folks. We're often putting them up to perform in front of adults, but how often do our students do something with the children in the church? Of course, and then with the whole discussion of separate services on Sundays for teenagers and adults. Something else they found, the more kids serve and build relationships, here it is, with younger children, the more likely they are to hang on to their faith. So let this kind of sink in on maybe some ways you can tweak what you're doing in your student choir. This is really revealing when I was reading over this. Huge implications for what we do in student choir. But relevance, as we've just seen, is only part of it. Those are the things that help make student choirs, I hope you've seen, why this ministry is still relevant, the power that it can have in meeting needs. But youth choir, student choir, can also be a retreat. Now, what comes to your mind when you see this word? I'm just curious. What do you think?
Getting away.
Getting away, okay. Somebody else?
Bonding time.
Bonding time, okay.
Rest.
Rest, okay.
Fun.
Fun, yeah. Been on a lot of retreats, have a lot of fun.
Change of environment.
Change of environment, good.
Place to go and concentrate on upcoming music for the year, get that head start.
Yeah, okay, place to go, get a jump start on music, yeah. A few official definitions just for us to throw up here. An act of moving back or withdrawing, an act of changing one's decisions, plans, or attitude, a quiet or secluded place in which one can rest and relax, a period of seclusion for the purposes of prayer and meditation. There are a few others that were listed, but I didn't put them up here. Retreat. Oh, okay, let's go forward here. A few other guiding thoughts, some quotes. the idea of retreat for youth choir. When a mutual and sympathetic understanding of the human spirit is built, people finally become persons. Is student choir a place where your students can retreat and find wholeness? Spirituality is the most practical thing in the whole wide world. I challenge anyone to think of anything more practical than spirituality as I have defined it. Not piety, not devotion, not religion, not worship, but spirituality. Waking up. Looking at the heartache everywhere. Look at the loneliness. Look at the fear, the confusion, the conflicts in the hearts of people. Inner conflict, outer conflict. Suppose somebody gave you a way of getting rid of all of that. Suppose somebody gave you a way to stop the tremendous drainage of energy, of health, of emotion that comes from these conflicts and confusion. It's a good description of many teenagers. Would you want that? Suppose someone showed us a way whereby we would truly love one another and be at peace, be at love. Can you think of anything more practical than that? How timely. But that politics is more practical. What's the earthly use of putting a man on the moon when we cannot live on the earth? One more here. The awareness of grandeur and the sublime is all but gone from the modern mind. Our systems of education stress the importance of enabling the students to exploit the power aspect of reality. To some degree, they try to develop this ability to appreciate beauty, but there is no education for the sublime. We teach the children how to measure, how to weigh. We fail to teach them how to revere, how to sense wonder and awe. The sense for the sublime, the sign of the inward greatness of the human soul, and something which is potentially given to all men, is now a rare gift. What if our students could retreat to experience such things? Yet without it, the world becomes flat and the soul a vacuum. There's one more quote. I'm going to skip over this for time. This summer, I went to we have a music camp at Lee for a week, and students come and they take lessons, they have classes, they sing in ensembles, I direct the choir. And I knew this presentation was coming up, so I had a captive audience of teenagers just a few weeks ago. And I gave them a sheet of paper and I asked them, on one side I had a few questions I wanted them to answer, but on the back side I asked them to complete this statement. I enjoy making music because. Here's a few responses. It lets me be me. It makes me feel as if I am really worth something, as if I have a true purpose in life, which I do, to serve God with my voice. It's like my heart literally smiles and dances and sings along with me. I enjoy making music because it's a part of my life. Without music, life would be dull. Music isn't something that I want. It's something that I need. Retreat. Music. The musical experience is a retreat for these folks. What does that mean? I put it this way. Youth choir is an escape. Or if you want to use the word respite, I think it's really applicable. For many, student choir can be an escape from the craziness of the world, but it also can be a place to experience the sublime, if we're doing it right, if we're thinking creatively. And to dive into these deeper places. Most people think teenagers aren't deep, but that's just on the surface. They're good at being actors and actresses. Well, how do we do that? A few action points. Foster a welcoming and open environment. That involves adult leaders, and select these adults carefully, very carefully. Sorry. One of the things I mean by that is, what does that have to do with being an escape? Well, in this open environment, hopefully we're providing affirmation, right? Love, support, these kinds of things. That's really important. And it's not just from you, but when there's a team, a presence of other adults doing that, that is so powerful. I mean, that might be some of the most positive interaction with adults that your students ever get in a whole week. Pretty strong. Maybe you have adults lead devotions, or maybe you do small groups, okay, within your choir that do things maybe after rehearsal. Maybe you restructure your schedule to make time for that. This is key. This is just an educational truth. Boundaries provide freedom and security. And let me tell you, friends, it doesn't get more countercultural than this. The world right now, our society is built on having no boundaries and no one saying no. And no one saying, that's not right, this is what we're going to do. But here's the deal. You try to structure a playground with no boundaries. People get hurt. If you really believe in no boundaries, go to bed with your windows up and your doors unlocked. You would never do that, right? But for some reason, when it gets into organized activities with our students and our young, we're afraid to put up boundaries because we think it's restricting. My children have more freedom to play and enjoy the playground when I say, stay here. They know exactly within the realms of which they can play. But when I don't set that, they don't know where the boundaries are, and there's uncertainty, there's anxiety, there's discomfort.
With youth, we think sometimes they can come
Ah,
with their boundaries.
yeah.
And in truth, some of them have no boundaries anywhere else but there.
That's exactly right. And they are craving them, but they wouldn't know how to articulate that.
No, right.
And it's just side, they know that something's missing, right? And there's a lot of anxiety.
And they'll
So-
roll their eyes at you whenever you ask.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Right.
So just simple guidelines, right? If you're structuring your youth choir, speech, behavior, cell phones, that's just a part of our world now. Attire is a big thing I've seen. Just establishing boundaries in a few basic categories. That gives students a sense of security, a sense of freedom. Keeping a structured rehearsal plan. Don't just go in and wing it. I've been there. I've done it before. I'll pay the price for it later. But just taking a little bit of time to have a plan together. And when you have it, keep it moving. Keep it enjoyable. Keep it productive. Always positive reinforcement. These are basic things we all know. Find ways to have humor. And be natural, you know. Let yourself, here's the thing I've noticed. The conductors that have meant the most in my life, and maybe you think of those in your life as well, are those who, they're relatable, they're real. That's the word I get on my teaching evaluations a lot. You're very real, and you're not putting up a facade. It's easy to do that when you think it's us versus them, as an adult versus student. But that language needs to change. Right now with the student culture, it needs to be a little more we. They've had enough us versus them. Chat chance, all the talking. What if you were able to say, okay, you specifically programmed a talking moment in your rehearsal, but you gave them time to talk about something in the music? Chat chance, 2 minutes. Take 2 minutes, and maybe you've got groups together already, or maybe you just assign them right on the spot, depending how large your group is. But give them some pointed ways of actually having a chance to talk in rehearsal. This is key. This is a little out there for some of you maybe, but fostering independent singing. A lot of students are very nervous about singing, but maybe with your leaders, you have them demonstrate something in rehearsal, a passage that you're trying to work on. And that this idea that you don't have to be a soloist, okay, but that it's your voice that God has given you, and use what God has given you, right? This idea of independent singing. And that has to start early. You just can't throw that on the junior, senior, but you start fostering that in young students as they come up. And then there's the sense of comfort, right? There's a place where I can come and I'm who I am, I have my voice, and I'm using it. A place of retreat, a place of escape. Little things like this that create this atmosphere of retreat. Do you recognize birthdays or student achievement? This is huge. Maybe you have a bulletin board you can put up things you hear about. Oftentimes I'd hear about things the week after, or after the fact we should have celebrated, or something was in the newspaper and I didn't get the newspaper. That could be a really great thing to do. Try to connect with students before and after rehearsal. I know that's hard. I had struggled, a hard time doing that. Whether it's a handshake, a hug, a high five, calling them by name, whatever. That's huge. They know that you see them more as just a body in the seat, but as a real person. There's been real interaction there. This is fun. When I'm in rehearsals, I'm wanting to maybe build some competition among the sexes. Compare, okay, basses, that was really great. Sopranos, how they do. Altos, how the basses do. You know, this kind of healthy competition. This is kind of a sense of camaraderie that comes with that. And that's comforting. There's a sense that they're on a team, right? And that is comforting for a student. Developing student leadership. You can have a whole session on this. Tim Lautzenheiser is one of the best band guys. He talks about student leadership development. But how are you using your upperclassmen, or juniors or seniors, to be involved in the students' lives that are younger? And that, again, creates that sense of we're on a team, but there's people who've got my back that are older than me. They're not too cool for school. And you have to mentor those people. And this doesn't happen overnight, but you have to pour into those upperclassmen so they can pour in to younger, lowerclassmen. If you're married, find ways to involve your spouse. I found this to be a small but really significant thing that I do with my women's choir at Lee. The women see me all the time, but they rarely get to see my wife. But occasionally she'll come up and she'll lead a devotion, she'll come on retreat. She likes to bake. I really married up. Man, she's a great cook. She'll bring food. We have a Tuesday night rehearsal. It's part of our schedule. And she'll bring food. And the girls just love getting to see her. And there's that sense of that you might be the only pair, married husband and wife, that some of these students see. They don't know how to get into a relationship with, for a future relationship because they haven't seen one done well. And so this is really huge. And there's a sense of, wow. And I've had multiple students on evaluation say, thank you so much for involving your wife. And it's not tooting my own horn, it's just the situation that many of them come from. We have not seen a husband and wife interact with positivity, however they're going to word that in such a way until we've seen you and your wife together. It makes a huge impact. This is key. Be consistent. Any expectations you set, recognitions, whatever disciplines, how you structure rehearsal, really, really, really important. Other ideas?
Kids respond when they know you love them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great place to start right there.
That's exactly right.
And
Yeah. There's no, we got this a pro here. He knows what he's talking about.
In the developing student leadership, one of the things that we do is to have juniors and seniors be big brothers and sisters for the newest kids that come in.
Yeah.
And we take time for them to introduce that new 7th grade kid that comes into the program. There is nothing more powerful for a 7th grade kid than a senior to spend time with them and because so often there's such a divide.
Yeah.
And it is really big, and it keeps. We have certain things we ask those older kids to do, but it really does keep those kids involved, and they don't feel like they have to be sort of invisible.
Yeah.
And it makes a big difference. And it also gives us an opportunity for everybody to hear every new kid's name at least one time. So that because a lot of times kids don't know each other from being in high school and junior high. Sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
So it's really very, very positive and powerful to do that.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Ronnie?
don't take yourself too seriously.
Boy, that's key. So important. That's why I love middle school. I just dig it, man. It's not people's cup of tea, but I had a friend who said I could drink it all day long. Yep, absolutely. So we've seen the importance of the idea of relevance with the student choir, the importance of student choir as a place of retreat or a place of escape. We've all mentioned, and I think understand this idea of the importance of relationships in youth choir. So just really quickly, what are some of the relationships, any of these questions are up for grabs. What are some that form in the youth choir? Why are they significant? How do we encourage those relationships? Anyone?
Connection.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, connection with the singer next to you. I've got one who's very shy and one who's not. And the one who's not is helping to bring out the one who is very shy.
Mm.
But their power in their voices together, they love singing together.
One of the things that, and I tell my seniors this too, is because they're not always aware that the new kids coming in, the 7th graders or something, are watching their every move.
Mm-hmm.
And the importance of them needing to be a positive role model for the younger kids. Because I repeatedly hear as those 7th graders finally become seniors, they say, I was so scared when I came in as a 7th grader and I just looked at those big seniors and I saw so-and-so who, you know, I could really model my life after a little bit, so
Yeah.
I think those are important.
Personal testimony here. I've just seen the power of the relationships that those students can form with adult leaders. Not just me, but the leaders that go on tours with us, or that are sectional rehearsal helpers, and they go to those people, and you'll never know about it. You know, you only hear about it from that adult later who said, so and so came up to me or wrote me a note and said thank you for, you know, whatever it may be. That relationship might be a launch pad for something much more deeper and meaningful. But youth choir was the place where that germination, where it started, it came from. Here's some thoughts. In terms of relationships, right, that youth choir, we're connecting. We're connecting with one another. We're connecting in various ways. We're making connections. Musical connections, mental, physical. We're next to each other. On the bus, you smell. On tours, you stink. The emotional or the relational connection that you have with one another. Of course, spiritual and social connections. All of those things are really huge. That mark of relationship is this idea of connection. Really important. I love this quote. Ralph Waldo Emerson, the only way to have friends is to be one. Really, really important. One of my, a great writer, I wouldn't say, I'm supposed to say a favorite writer, but that's not exactly true, but he has some great thoughts on this. Parker Palm, I'm sorry, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. I forgot I had this one up here. Let the person who cannot be alone, be aware of community, and let the person who is not in community be aware of being alone. And this Parker Palmer quote: community does not necessarily mean living face to face with others. Rather, it means never losing the awareness that we are connected to each other. I think that's really good. It is not about the presence of other people. It's about being fully open to the reality of relationship, whether or not we are alone. He goes on, unfortunately, community in our culture too often means a group of people who go crashing through the woods together, scaring the soul away. In spaces ranging from congregations to classrooms, we preach and teach, assert and argue, claim and proclaim, admonish and advise, and generally behave in ways that drive everything original and wild into hiding. Under these conditions, the intellect, emotions, will, and ego may emerge, but not the soul. We scare off all the soulful things, like respectful relationship, goodwill, and hope. Skip that quote for time. I like this one at the bottom. All actual life is encounter. Relationships. This idea of encountering with another person. Martin Buber. What does this mean? Well, youth choir as a community for us. This idea of relationships, the importance of a sense of community. In the book 2.0, I mentioned it this morning, Chap Clark, get this book, it's great. Any of you working with students need to have it. Great research study on the adolescent life experience. First published in 2004, updated in 2011. After all of his research, talking with student after student at the school in California, he was a substitute teacher for a year. He came away with these conclusions. This is going to be kind of obvious probably to you. Adolescents desire meaningful relationships with other adolescents. Adolescents desire meaningful relationships with adults. The first one probably is kind of a duh, but maybe we don't automatically think of the second one. Again, we get this idea of us and them. And then this last one, after all the research and study that he had done, these are the three conclusions. The third one, adolescents desire community and want to know they are a part of something bigger than themselves, a place to make a meaningful contribution. Think about, again, put that context, okay, put your student choir director hat on. Wow, what an opportunity. It's built in. All three of those, right there, in one ministry, if we're doing it right. Well, how do we do that? Some action points. Let's get nitty-gritty. Take a retreat. If you're not doing it, I encourage you, take a retreat and let those relationships really launch. Youth Q. How many of you were at the concert last night? Youth choir? Okay. Randy Edwards directing, organizes Youth Q. I'm here at his request, kind of on behalf of Youth Q. And there's this additional ministry that's under Youth Q called QWeb, which is like a blog with all sorts of resources. I'm one of the contributors to the blog. I need to update. I haven't done one in a while. But there's a section of it called Q Notes. And that's where these postings are. And they're on everything from kind of the philosophical, the inspirational that Randy often submits. Mine are often like toolkit, toolbox, things, programming, conducting, whatever, how-tos. But my friend Kathy Britton, she is the guru, I'm telling you, on retreat stuff. And she's got tons of posts from a conference we did last year together that she put up, and go there. If you've done it before, I bet you're going to find some new ideas. She's really great. Plan non-rehearsal social events. Do you do some sort of kickoff party? Do you have a fall or Christmas, winter, spring, some sort of fun outing periodically that you've scheduled in? Social events, really, really key. Opportunities, you're creating the atmosphere, the environment for community to happen. How many of you had a worship service with just your choir? Just the choir, not where they're in a worship service, but maybe it's led by a student. Maybe it's led by you. Or maybe it's led by an adult leader, or a combination thereof. How powerful is that? Where the upperclassmen and you lead a worship service for your whole student choir. That's a very special moment. Serving outside the walls of the church. I think we have an understanding of this. I hope we do, that we're not just singing for our people or serving ourselves, but we're getting out and trying to do it at least 2 times a semester. I think it's a good benchmarker. Singing outside of the church 2 times a semester. And of course, going on a mission tour. You have to do both, sing and serve. I think that's what you should be doing. And when you do those things, that's great relationships that are built. Very meaningful. When you get down and dirty next to one another. Somebody mentioned it a minute ago, the big and little system, right? Huge. Pairing older students with the younger students. Or maybe you have a different way of putting together some small groups that you break out in some way in rehearsal or after rehearsal. All those things are ways to facilitate a sense of community. We were mentioning, but anything else on this before we go on? Any other ideas? On ways of having and facilitating relationships. Anything you've done that you've seen really successful?
At the end of our tours, on our last day, we have a time when we can all just be in the room together, and it's a chance for our seniors to, we call it their senior speech, and they share with everybody what they will share their fear. You know, when I was a 7th grader, scared to death, you know, or things like that. They share what they want others to remember about them. They share. They give their advice, you know, and they look at some of these other kids and say, "Don't give up. You be here. You make the time to be here." And then what becomes very, very touching is they will tend to thank the adults. My adults work with them in 3-year cycles. So when an adult comes on and helps me on Sunday morning, they're there Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, all the retreats, all the fundraisers, everything. For 3 years. Wow. And sometimes it's their parents, and that's the most touching when they say, and I'm going to say to mom and dad how much I love them. It really is very touching.
Man, that's awesome. I had forgotten, we did sort of a similar thing at a church I was in Birmingham, but they were doing it this way before I got there. The seniors, this had a large choir, so that event would have taken a really long time. They had the seniors submit them in advance written, and they put them in the tour book. A lot of times you'll put together a tour book with all the details, and they even went as far as to put like their senior, you know, from the yearbook in there with the kind of their last words or thoughts. You know, very meaningful. Someone else. You can think of this in terms of how are you building those traditions? That's a tradition there. That's a really strong one. And those traditions generate a sense of connectivity, right? In this 4 or 6 year cycle you might be on, depending on,
The youth choir grew up in, we had a song at the end of the home concert that all the alumni would come back and sing. And so I started that in our thing, and that's been really powerful. It shows them they're bigger than them.
That's right. huge. Boy, that's a good one.
This may sound a little funny. I mean, I don't know any other choir that does this. But we give them a cross on a robe is what it is, when they join the choir, and then they get different colored beads according to things that they do. If they sing in the choir, if they play the bells, if they do a solo, if they're in the drama group, if they go on tour, you know, if they're an officer, you know, things like this, and they get and they love those beads. And they wear them every Sunday. So, you know, constantly there's the question of, well, what if they've got all these beads and some of them have very many beads, and you get to say what's the number of years they've been in and stuff like that. And they take that with them, of course, when they graduate. And you know, they tell me they love to wear them. So
That's great. Very good. Well, let's review. Okay, relevance. The opportunity for a student choir to be a shaper of identity, character, faith. Retreat. Youth choir is a place of escape. Okay? And relationships. Youth choir is a community. I just feel like if you have got these three things going, what student does not want to be part of that? I mean, you have to shut the door and say no more. We got no room. I mean, that's a dynamic place. What else? What else in their life could do those three things? Not dance or music lessons. Great things, but not this. Not faith. Athletics, great things, shapes character, identity. I don't know if it's an escape. There's a sense of community. But a lot of other things that get close to this, get part of it. But if you get all three of these together, that's a very powerful combination. Back to Clark's book, Hurt 2.0. Before I forgot a note I wrote down here and I wanted to say. Think in terms of what we're doing. This is the very pastoral side, right? Do you think of yourself as a pastoral director? Maybe you don't, but I want to encourage you to think that way as you operate your student choir ministry. Again, this is what we can leverage. This is our difference. Give them that. Randy Edwards says, youth choir. Give them that thing that nobody else can. Make it that place that they will not experience any other place in their life. That's powerful. Clark says a few things as we kind of wrap up to think about. How do we do this? Well, he makes some points that are really strong for us as leaders. Those who work with you should be trained in changing youth culture. Just to do this well, it's really important that we stay up on what's going on. And this book is a really great start, just so you know. Those who serve adolescents must work together. I'm tired of hearing the youth ministry and the music ministry be at odds with one another. It's an old story. We're working with the same kids. How can we not get together on the same page? It's beyond me. I hear story after story of ministers who are in that situation. And maybe you've been there before. Maybe you are right now. That's a pride issue. Could be on both sides of the spectrum. That's got to fall. We're not being pastoral. We're not working together.
We also have, there's one other thing in that, and that is that youth ministers change so quickly.
That's true.
For the most part.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
Some of them come from places, as we have found, that have never had a youth choir program.
Yeah.
And for a long, long time, where I am, we've had 100 kids in the youth choir, and they don't have as many, and so they come in almost feeling defensive.
Yeah,
and you have to sometimes you just kind of have to open your door and say, hey, we want to work with you.
Yeah.
We're not here to compete with you, and because they've never experienced the youth choir anywhere else they've been.
Yeah.
Because not everybody has that. So they're not always sure about what this is about. You know. Yeah. So some of them see that as a music ministry thing, and not a youth ministry thing. So you kind of have to, sometimes you just have to work at that.
Yeah. That's a really great point. It's work as a good description. It's kind of maybe an ongoing conversation.
It continues.
That's a good point, especially that turnover. That's so true. That's so true.
My student minister, he comes to every rehearsal.
Oh, there you go.
Every rehearsal.
You can't beat that.
And then we have an understanding. I said, when we go on choir tour, I don't want you to do anything but spend time with kids.
Yeah. There you go.
I got it. I got all the planning, all that stuff.
Yeah.
You invest in the lives of these kids.
Yeah.
It works really well.
Do
That's huge.
they go on a youth mission trip?
They do. They don't do a mission trip, they do a serve week, where they do local stuff, but yeah. So, I mean, they stay busy all summer, but.
Yeah.
I mean, this-
That can be a point of contention, is the youth mission or youth
Yeah.
choir mission,
Yeah.
all that stuff, so that's,
Yeah, it's good
That's-
point.
to be really,
great.
you know.
And we go on things with our youth ministry teams too.
That's what I did
We
as
do it
well.
back, we do it back and forth.
Mhm.
So the kids see that that's not our thing and that's their thing
Yeah.
and all of that.
Yeah.
We do this as a team, this is everybody.
This is a bigger conversation in education where we've got to get past this silo mentality. That's not how really great education works, and just it is a web effect and interconnectedness. That's where the real change happens when we're structured in that way. Much more sustainable long term. So very important. Those who serve adolescents must understand youth. We talked about youth culture, but some people are working with students, they don't really get how students think or what they're dealing with. And don't understand the need for boundaries. And and you have to empower your adults to say, okay, if you see a student doing this, you have the, here's where your authority as an adult leader goes, and here's where it stops. You have to give your adult leaders boundaries as well. You might have those who think they want to be everybody's mama, and that's not right. They don't need to be doing that. And you just have to kind of massage or work through that a little bit with your adult leaders. At least that has been my experience. But I've had some great adult leaders. But empowering them to reinforce the boundaries that you set. There's nothing worse than an adult leader that cuts your legs out from underneath you and that will not reinforce the boundaries, especially when you're on tours and traveling, that won't support that. You just have to be very cautious of that. Because then what are you doing? You're sending mixed messages to your students.
That's right.
And that's what they see every other day. And all of a sudden you've lost your leverage. Parents need to be equipped. This is huge. And encouraged to parent the changing adolescent. Maybe this is a conversation with the youth pastor. What are we doing to help, just bring awareness and teach our parents? A lot of them are maybe too prideful to go to the youth pastor and say, man, can we have some sort of training? Because you think, I'm a parent, I should know what I'm supposed to be doing. Well, yeah, but teenage life is different. I mean, each season is unique. And so that's really important. Communities. So we move from individuals to communities. Communities must make sure that each student has a few adult advocates who know and care for him or her. Just think about some of the students in your choir ministry. Do you think they could name 3 adults that are advocates from your church? That's a good question to ask. I hope the answer is yes. And if they don't, what are some things you could do to get adults involved more with your students, making those relationships happen? Questions? Other comments?
You mentioned on the handout, going on a mission trip.
Mhm.
Do you have any resources that you recommend for helping with ideas and planning? And
Yeah, I'll give you it's kind of the standard, a lot of people in here probably know is Randy Edwards' book. I don't have it up here. Revealing Riches, Rebuilding Lives. Okay, Revealing Riches, Rebuilding Lives. I read Edwards. And he goes into all sorts of the nuts and bolts of youth choir, but as a whole thing there on tour planning, ideas for having a successful tour. There's there's a good bit of that conversation also on the blog, qweb.net. Randy Kilpatrick from Tallowood he's got several entries tour related. Randy does a great job of his tours. Yeah, this is really fun. Yeah, he's dynamite. So there's some things you read over. Other questions? Has this been helpful?
Yes.
Okay. That makes me feel good. I wanted it to be. Spraying and stewing over this. Oh, I hope this meets the need we're looking for. Before we go, a couple testimonials. Remember those students I mentioned on tour or at the summer camp a few minutes ago? I enjoy making music because here are a few. This was from Chap's book. This first one. We know how to be a teenager. We want the church to show us how to be adults. And many of us are parenting in ways, we're so busy worrying about raising good kids that we forget that we are raising good adults. I'm convicted that as a parent of 8, 6, and 4-year-olds, I need to be raising not good kids, I need to be raising good adults. The quiver has got to be ready to launch them, right? Back to summer camp here. I enjoy making music because it gives me an escape, a way to express myself, a connection, there it is, with my peers, audience, God, and myself. It helps me through every aspect of my life, and I would be lost without it. This one gets me. I hope I can get through it. My dad died when I was 13, and he was a musician. Whenever I sing, it feels like I am making up for the time I missed with him. It has drastically changed my life for the better and has brought me closer to the Lord, and it gives me such joy and passion. It is what I want to do with my life because its impact on me is so amazing. I can't describe it. To God be the glory. You might have students like that sitting in your choir right now. You maybe know who they are. And so here's to a passionate, purposeful youth choir ministry, right? Y'all are out there in the trenches. Go get it. Go knock it out. Pursue a healthy heartbeat. Thanks so much.